I've been on my journey for about 59 years, and it's gotten a little uncomfortable lately. I got an old man's malady. It's sort of like gray hair or maybe muscle atrophy, more apropos. BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia. Sounds horrible, but half the men at age 60 get it, and by 90% have it. So it's sort of like getting gray hair. Anyways, I wanted to tell you the story of what's happened to me, how I got it, and what I did. I came up with an exercise device that I'll tell you about. Anyways, the prostate sits below the bladder, and it's got three main jobs. One, oh, by the way, this is going to be about the birds and the bees. So get ready. Anyways, the prostate has three main functions. One is a hormone function where it converts testosterone into another form of testosterone, DHT. And the other mid-function is to create part of the semen. It's an alkaline matter that mixes in and has enzymes that stimulate the sperm, and also sugars to nourish the sperm as they're making their way to where they're going. And also, finally, the last bit of bladder void, it helps excrete. And by the way, projects the ejaculate. And in my case, I started with tingling in the urethra and tingling in the other ducts that enter the prostate that come from the testes. And it progressed into an urge to urinate, which didn't really come from the bladder. It was more lower. It was like from the prostate. And this became often quite embarrassing. I remember one time at work, I had to march past 60 of my coworkers while I felt like I was going to wet myself, and so I was squeezing, wished I could squeeze and run at the same time. Fortunately, I had enough moxie and determination not to do that. But then when I got to the bathroom, just a little bit came out. It was really, really disturbing. And one would think that might be enough to cause action, but no. What I finally wound up doing was taking action after the final straw. And the thing that incited nuclear war and declared Little Rocket Man and dropped the shoe and all those other cliches was when I had my morning coffee, the little prostate would just go nuts. And I went 2 days without coffee, and that just wasn't going to suffice. So what did I do? I got Google out. I started looking. I researched. I educated myself. And I found that the prostate is a muscular glandular organ that has epithelial cells, pardon my pronunciation, that excrete the portion of the semen, the prostatic fluid. And these cells are arranged in little sacs. There's a spherical arrangement with a duct coming from each of the little sacs. And then those ducts combine, and it winds up looking a bit like a raspberry or a blackberry, replacing grapes. The raspberries are where the grapes would be, and all the stems join together, and you wind up with 30 of these ducts that finally combine into two, which lead to the urethra. And this mixes with the sperm from the testes, and with good luck, might make a baby. At any rate, the cells that line these sacs have from what I read, have about a 2-year lifespan. So this means that they must die and get replaced. Well, as we age, our another thing about the prostate, let's discuss its structure a little more. It has a muscle in the back that, actually the muscle's in the front, right in the front behind the pubic bone, or above it, and this muscle contracts and pulls a lot of tendon-like things. I'm sure the doctors have a fine name for all that, and this makes the volume of the interior smaller, squeezing all those raspberries and grapes and mixing in the semen, the prostatic fluid, to make the semen from the testicles. And then this muscle also at the same time pushes all that out rather forcefully, as you know, and that's one of the big functions of the prostate, getting that job done. Well, as we age, that muscle and those tendons may atrophy. So, sort of like the skeletal muscles. And unlike other maladies of age, graying and sagging skin and looking mean, and we have an ability to influence this. We can work this muscle. And I want to show you and describe to you how to use a device that strengthens this muscle and tendon arrangement around the prostate. And it's my hope that it will be safe for you, and that it will restore vitality and youth, and make your life much more comfortable like it was. Well, here's a picture that I found on the internet. I've had a hard time finding a picture that shows everything, but this one brings to mind quite a few subjects. Here's the bladder, obviously, and the urethra, and I guess a normal sized prostate with the duct coming from the testes all the way through around here. And a doctor is performing a digital rectal exam, a DRE in this figure. Another thing that comes to mind from this picture is there's no portrayal of the muscle here in the front of the prostate, and it does give you a hint of the glandular structure. This has plagued mankind for many a year, and what did the ancients do? Well, they performed prostatic massage, and in the 30s, men used to pay to go to the doctor's office and have a doctor massage and rub the prostate, and this alleviated the symptoms somewhat. Here's the urethra, and the first zone have been defined of the prostate, which the transition encircles the urethra itself. And then there's the central zone, which surrounds the ducts leading from the testes. And finally, there's a peripheral zone, which kind of encircles all of that. Now we get into the meat of the matter. Here's the muscle and the surrounding connective tissue that squeezes all of these different zones together to create the ejaculation. Here's a view of the top, at the middle, from the top, a plan form view, if you will, showing the central, the transition, the central, and the transition, the central, and the peripheral zones. And here's the muscle that pulls on the surrounding fibrous structure to squeeze the prostate during ejaculation and bladder emptying. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about what can be done to treat it. Lifestyle changes, learning to avoid different drugs that might cause excitement of the glands, like my coffee and alcohol. Sitting instead of standing might be better. There's two main classes of drugs, alpha blockers and reductase inhibitors, each of which have bad things, like lowers your DHT, which is the free form, the usable form of testosterone. So that doesn't sound good. The other one's an alpha blocker, which is could give you low blood pressure or all kinds of other side effects, which wouldn't be so great. And there's some other drugs when combined with the two main classes, might do something. And finally, if a man's having trouble urinating, why, he could self-catheter. That doesn't sound so great. And then, of course, our surgeons have some solutions, which would include actually cutting the thing in half and cutting out tissue. And then there's some transurethral, where they go up through the urethra and do some tissue removal. Finally, they have different catheters that they put up through the urethra into the gland, which they could introduce heat or radiation or other destructive things to kill cells and clear a path through the middle of the gland. And of course, we've got some different herbal methods that seem to help, maybe, sort of. Here are some different devices that people have come up with to help overcome the problem. This is from the 30s, I think. It's a device to massage the prostate yourself instead of asking your wife or the doctor. And then this is something to help a man void, clearly not desirable. These are pretty well marketed. It's a thing one puts in his rectum to massage the prostate. You flex your rectal glands and it wiggles and shakes. There's a Chinese thing that looks horrible. I guess another Chinese patent. I'm not sure if they're going to shoot it or what the plan is. My Chinese doesn't really have it. So those are some of the things that have been tried in the past with marginal success. I bet you're thinking, all right, we're back in the woods. No more of that horrible anatomy stuff and treatments that maybe not do worse than they did before. And I bet he's going to tell me to do Kegel exercises. Well, unfortunately, we got to talk a little more about anatomy. The little spherical sac I was telling you about in the berry analogy, the doctors call those acini, A-C-I-N-N-I. That's the little sac. And fortunately, they use the plural instead of acinius. And the cells within the acini, they don't call acinar. They change the pronunciation, thank God, to acinar. The acinar cells are kind of like, they look a little bit like kernels on a cob, a corn cob. And with this background, I can tell you more about my theory of how having a strong prostate muscle is beneficial. The acinar cells are thought to live about 2 years, and if they're not given the normal pressure and so forth, they could live longer. And having a normal, healthy, strong prostate muscle, which achieves normal operating pressures, for lack of a better analogy, it kills the old cells off. In fact, when they biopsy for cancer, there's an acronym for overgrowth of these acinar cells, which escapes me, but it's hither or thither. So one has to develop these muscles to create that pressure to kill off the old cells and prevent the overgrowth. Now, a Kegel exercise, which maybe many of you have heard of, is a contraction of a muscle in one position, isometric, constant position, constant measurement. And NASA, studying the effects of muscle atrophy and space travel, determined that it just doesn't work. It doesn't make the proteins associated with muscle growth and function like other forms of exercise. So we need an exercise that takes the muscle to its full range of motion and at a constant speed and with a variable resistance. This is called isokinetic, constant speed. And how are we going to do this? I'll show you. So how are we going to exercise a muscle which has no opposing muscle and is way up in the body? Well, here it is. A piece of 300 series stainless steel with a specially contoured end to enter in through the urethra up into the prostate, and then to bump into the bottom of the bladder. Most of the drawings don't show the little funnel-like structure between the top of the prostate and the bottom of the bladder. When the rod is lined up to pass directly through the prostate, it will bump into the bottom of the bladder, and you'll know not to enter it. Great risk of infection. At any rate, this rod, I call the Wellrod, is offered in 4 sizes, and the surface finish is mirror-like, and one can use different lubricants to make it pass into the organ and through the structures more comfortably. And that, by the way, should be your guide. There should be minimal pain when you're using this. And it winds up kind of like being on a golf course. You line up each shot. You go in to the meatus, sphincter, at the penis, rotate around, Sorry, ladies, no live demonstration. I apologize. And YouTube just wouldn't like it. And I'd like to bump my prostate. And the first time I did it after it got into some shape, I thought I'd actually hit the bladder, because the analogy of it being a walnut, a healthy prostate, is kind of hard. So once you're near the prostate, you'll find the angle that's appropriate for passing straight up into it, and you shouldn't hit the sphincter into the bladder. You'll bump the bladder, and that funnel structure will allow you to let me get on my hands right, beyond the bone for the pelvis right here, and be up in the bladder, and then you rotate the Wellrod this way to extend the muscles and the tenuous tendon-like structures around the prostate out, and then offer resistance as you flex. And this gives you a range of motion through the muscle contracture and allows strengthening to occur, just like exercising any other muscle. So we can restore the pressure and vitality of a muscle group which is naturally going to atrophy if nothing is done. So it's my hope that this device will avoid you from having to use the back door, and you can clean up and use the front door. I have washed in warm water my hands and the Wellrod, and I've not ever had a trouble with an infection since I've been using it, and my symptoms are virtually gone. I've been training a month maybe, and it's my hope that this device will make your life more comfortable and restore youth and vitality, and that you'll be comfortable. The marketing department told me to tell you that the Wellrods are available on eBay, and that the way to size the choice is to get a pin or another tapered instrument like that, place it in the meatus, and find the largest diameter that's comfortable for you, and order the nearest size rod based on that. Finally, they said that a lubricant water's a good choice, and I found that the least irritating of the oils is olive oil. So I hope that this will be an improvement in your life, and cheers. The legal community wants me to make a couple of formal announcements. One, before beginning any kind of an exercise program, particularly this muscle group, one should see their doctor. Also, they instructed me to tell you, don't use this while snowboarding, water skiing, playing basketball, golf, or any other sporting event. They suggest that you be in a safe place where there's little chance of falling or other motions that would be spurious. Further, they said, for the people who live in the great states with loose marijuana laws, not to use it while you're, ooh, hey dude, stoned, and for the rest of the country, don't use it while you're intoxicated. So you have to have all of your faculties to safely exercise. You're dealing with delicate structures after all. So with these formalities out of the way, I again pray that this device helps you through the passage on your journey. May you be blessed.